It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, and how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Friday, May 12th, and so happy for you joining us. And we are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Until the End Mental Health, the Wednesday Message Word Study, and of course, commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. And yes, we're going to have another update on what is happening with Sunsteam's trial and stuff like that too. All right. So how are you doing, everyone? It is Friday. Yes, it's the best day, the best feeling day, I guess, because you know you have the weekend ahead of you. Even for me, I'm excited. For me, I record these on Thursday morning, so that I can get it out for the Friday morning in Asia, which means that after this podcast, I have the entire afternoon off. And then I have Friday and Saturday off, and then everything kicks off again from Sunday. But I'm super excited and super happy that I'm able to be here right now. You guys, it's already Friday. Fast week that went by. It almost felt like we just had the Sunday message. And, even for me, I'm like, wow, we've already gotten down to Friday. I am super excited. And for me, the cool thing about this weekend is the weather's going to be awesome in Vancouver. We're going to hit around 30 degrees for this weekend. It's going to get hot from this point on. Summer is already, it kind of feels like summer's already here. But I've been in temperatures in Vancouver. It's so far off from Malaysia. Malaysia's every day is like 32. Every day, right? Hot and humid, tropical weather. Here in Vancouver, when I first got here, it was like 9 degrees in the morning and at night. And during the daytime, it was about, 12 or 13. Nowadays, it's about 18, 19 during the day. And then, it drops to about, 10 in the mornings and the afternoons. So I'm freezing in the mornings too. I think that's why I kind of had a little bit of a cough yesterday, but I'm okay and a lot better right now. So yeah, it's kind of cool being in this type of weather. It's dry, no humidity. It's kind of nice. The sun hits you a little different, but it's kind of nice here, so I like it. Those of you out there, if you haven't done yet, go ahead, leave a like. Just hit that like button and comment to build our community here. Yes, like buttons too is communication. Just shows me that you guys are enjoying this. And for the community, go out there, check out the comment section, see what people say, like their comments. You don't have to say anything, or you can, reply in their comments, say I agree or I disagree, or just leave an emoji, and even that's worth it too. I'm just very, very happy that a lot of people are joining us here every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So you know what? Let's get up, let's support each other each and every day. This is a community we really want to build. This is what the whole purpose of the platform is, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm just so happy that what I envisioned for this platform is kind of starting out. It's really, really starting to go now. We got the man cave coming up. Also, we have the girl version of it. So I'm super interested to see what's going to happen. I was listening to their first episode is going to be a reaction to the first episode of the guys' man cave. So I'm excited to hear what they're going to say there. And I'm sure the guys are probably going to do a reaction to the girls' reaction of their first episode, because I think that would be quite funny too. But I'm very, very excited about this, because remember, we have Love and Life, we have the Prayer Podcast. So we already have three separate podcasts going on top of the Morning Star Drive, which is great. It's going to hit different groups, different types of people are going to be watching those things. And I am, for me, I'm just like, man, that's what I envision. Building a platform where we have, we don't have a lot of people in the English world anyways. And of course, after this fiasco, we have even less. But just the fact that we have this going on and we're building like a platform where we can gather the English-speaking members and they can talk with each other, do their podcasts. I don't even mind if you do it in your own language. I think that is kind of cool too. If you do it in your own language, that's fine. So I'm very excited that we already have more and more different podcasts coming out. I would love to see the Morning Star Drives in the morning for everyone, and then the afternoons people have like different other programs to watch too. I think that would be kind of cool too. So I'm very, very thankful to God. Very, very thankful that this that this podcast is growing. And for those of you guys out there, like I said, you guys can support us financially because as it grows more and more, we need better content. We need more, we need editors and we need other different things so that we can make this an even better place for people to be. So, I'm looking forward to the next ProviCon because, I think the fourth one has been made already. So we're just discussing when to release that one also. Either way, all right. All right, so yesterday I told you that I got hacked on my crypto, right? And like I said, it wasn't a real hack. It was just my stupidity. Honestly, it's my stupidity, right? So super, but here's the interesting thing that came out of it, right? So I told you what my mind was going through, and I was going, the moment I made up my mind, just make it back. Come on, you've done it before. It's not a whole lot. It's a lot, but it's not a whole lot in life. Just got to get it back. Right? So work on it, grind it out, and make some, just do what you need to do. So it's really interesting because right after I got hacked and then I made up my mind to go out and grind, this is when my mind for the last, 30 hours, 36 hours, I'm starting to think about so many different things that I can do with my time to, start making money again, right? And a ton of ideas came in. I watched a bunch of YouTube channels about side hustles I can do to make extra money or whatever it is. But in the end, the interesting thing was, that moment, that shock actually made me want to start running again, working again, right? I was going, hey, what can I do now? I got this time. I got to go out and do something. And I know my skills and abilities. And I was thinking to myself, what could I do in the world with these skills that I've built here in this history? And I thought to myself, I got two options, right? Well, I got actually multiple options because I can go find a job. For me, I'd be very happy working at a cafe, making coffees for people and stuff and talking to people. I'm very, very happy with that. But I was thinking to myself, what? I got two real options for myself, right? So it's about me, and it all has to do with me creating my own niche in the world, right? And I was I got to create my own niche. So I got, with the skills and abilities I have to create, I'm creating a niche in the world where people would need me. And then I thought to myself, I was wait, but then my second option is with my skills and abilities that have been made in this history, I can create a niche in this history too, right? And, for me, definitely more than half my life has been in this history. I know this history inside out, right? I know the words and everything else. And it really got my heart thinking about how easy it is actually for me to create a niche in this history more than in the world, right? And the reason is because Providence is still in development, right? So there's so much opportunity even inside this history to help people, to help people with things that they actually need. And, I thought to myself, is it really that difficult to create a niche? And I'm no, it isn't. Because think about this. There were no podcasts and nothing really on YouTube for Providence, right? But I created a niche with this podcast, creating a community in this social media world with this podcast, right? And I created the niche just by doing it. And already I have supporters on Patreon, stuff like that too. And I was yeah, I can do this. And I thought to myself that, since Provi right now is not super developed, because especially in the smaller country, Western countries, stuff like that too. None of the Western countries are over 1,000, right? Matter of fact, I think no one is even in the Western countries. I don't think no one's even hit 600 or 700. I don't think, right? No one's even hit. I know America's probably around 500, maybe a little less right now, right? So my thoughts have turned to making a niche that fits my skills and abilities. And I was what? I should do this in Providence. So I'm reaching out to different people and seeing the different things that I'll be able to do in this history too. So, one thing I'm realizing from this is I think it's a good thing for other people too to start thinking a bit differently, outside the box. Inside the box, even when you're working in the world, inside the box is working for a company, being an employee, 9-to-5 job, and you're only searching in places that are actually employing you. But when I think about outside the box is creating a niche, creating your own business. It's a place for you to thrive where you may not even be an employee, but more of a creator and independent contractor or boss for yourself, right? And you're making a living that way. So I hope that, there's a lot of people out there what do I do, making a living for myself? There's tons of things that you can do. But the first thing that matters, I believe, even when I was going through my experience with the crypto, I was you know what? Got to make up your mind first. And that's what I did. I was I got to do something about this. I'm going to go out and get something done, right? It's time for me to get back into the game kind of thing, right? So I think it's something that a lot of people should be thinking about also is what can I do to get myself back in, right? Or am I just kind of fitting too much inside the box? Should I try something a little bit outside? And I do think it's something that a lot of us can really, really think about also. All right. So that's one of the things I've been realizing over the last couple of days after I made up my mind, and it took a shock. It took some type of shock for me to understand, like, come on, man, you got time, go out and do something. And I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And then I thought to myself, I can do something with this time to benefit this history, especially in this chaotic time, not only through this podcast, but in different ways also. All right. So that's something interesting that I have been thinking over the last 2 days. I also had an interesting conversation with another friend of mine, and basically they're struggling with evangelizing their family member, right? So, and of course, sometimes for us being in this history, a lot of it just makes too much sense in this history, right? It just makes too much sense. And sometimes we don't understand why other people believe another way. Like, it would be even more frustrating if you had a family member in Providence and then left, and then they're coming against you, right? I think that would be a very, very difficult situation. Like, even for me, if you guys don't know, like, even my brother, my brother, I evangelized him in like 2005. And then he became even like the assistant leader of the church in Vancouver. And then eventually he left, right? He didn't leave on very good terms. It wasn't because of Sunsteam. It was because of the people inside the church or whatever it was, right? Something like that. And even I don't know the full situation or the full story. But what I do know is that, for me and him, I don't push the subject ever. For me is, I think one of the things that we have to understand about our family members, and if you're trying to evangelize your family, or you might have a situation, like I have way more than just one. I have my brother. I have 2 other cousins living in Vancouver that were evangelized and left. I have another cousin in Los Angeles who was in Providence and then left. He was even a Faith Star, and he married another Faith Star, kind of, they left together kind of thing, right? So I have these family members all over, but with like my cousin and his wife in LA, no problems with them. With my brother, I don't have any major problems or anything else like that, right? And the question is, how does that work? And this is my best advice for you when it comes to you and your family. And the one thing you have to understand is, evangelistic family is completely different than any other type of evangelism. It isn't, right? Because the situation is much different, because you're close, you have a relationship, and they're going to be there for the rest of your life. Which means that when you think about family evangelism, you have to always think long-term. They're always going to be there. So some things that they might say might be kind of shocking. It's okay, right? You can't look at it as a sprint, and don't just try to teach them all the time and bring up Bible questions and, trying to convince them to come to this history or that you know more about. There's just so many other things that you don't need to do. And the reason why, like I said, is long-term, because they'll always be there for you, right? In most cases, like family is always there. They don't really leave you. So it's a long-term project. When you think about newcomers, it's very, very short-term compared to your family, because you may only have like a 1-month window, 3-month window, 6-month window to evangelize them. And this is why it's more rushed and you're pushing, and it's much different. But you can't do it the same way with your family, right? So if I had to say this, the best way I would put it is an old proverbial saying of, let sleeping dogs lay. Now, what does that mean? Don't wake up the dog. Once the dog wakes up, there's trouble, right? Which means you don't have to keep bringing up stuff. You don't have to keep saying things to people when you already know they're not going to accept it, right? There's no need to. Sometimes you just need to agree to disagree, right? And I still, like, for me, those of you guys that don't know, I still talk to people that are no longer in Providence. I have no problem with them at all. I don't, right? Like, I may not agree with what they think or agree with their decision, but it's not like I'll sit there and I'll start backstabbing them or talking bad about them or not hang out with them, right? We understand, there's an understanding, like, say, for me and some other people, we agree to disagree. There's no need to convince or explain anything to each other. Because we both understand that we are on different sides, and that's fine, right? I don't live their life. They don't live mine. I don't make decisions for them, and they will never make decisions for me. They won't. At that point, I know, yeah, we're just agree to disagree. right? And when the time comes, the time will come. If there comes a time, there might come a time, but I don't know when. But when the time comes, of course, I'll be very open and talk to them, and and explain to them certain things. But besides that, not really. It's kind of like what Jesus said in Matthew 7, verse 6, don't give pearls to pigs and what is sacred to dogs. Now, am I saying that they're pigs and dogs? And the answer is no, I'm not saying that in that way, like they're terrible people. What I'm saying is they don't value what I personally value. So why would I give to them what I personally value when they don't value it, right? Example would be, let's just say it's a ring from my mom. Very sentimental. Might not be worth much, but if I give it to them, they're not going to value it in that situation because they don't value the sentiment of my mother's ring. They're kind of like a dog that doesn't value what is sacred because they had no idea what is sacred, right? So, the only time I would really be upset or bring it up is if they try to affect me or the direct people around me, like my family, right? In the end, people believe what they want. And even if they're wrong, right? In my eyes, even if they're wrong, you can't force people to believe what you believe, even if it's truth and even if it's right. So for you guys out there, I do think we need to let sleeping dogs lay. Like, you know what they're thinking and you know that you're not going to change their minds. There's no point. There really isn't. It's not saying that you're giving up on them. It's just that you're giving up on them at that moment because it's not going to work anyways, right? That's why I think a lot of times where, what's that called? Bible bash? Not Bible bash. Bible thumping? I forget what it is. It's like sometimes, don't you get upset when you're on like in the streets and people are trying to preach and they're trying to force the gospel into people? And they'll say certain things like, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. Oh, look at you. All you are citizens of hell. Like, when you look at that, you're like, ugh, oh my gosh. Like, could you really get someone to come when you're just like Bible, bashing them over the head with the Bible? And that's something that I don't want to do. But what's interesting though is, I'll tell you something interesting. When I was in England, there was always people in Trafalgar Square, and they were like, there's people dancing and singing, talking about Jesus. If you don't believe in Jesus, you go to hell, all these other different things. And for me, I looked at that like, ugh, that's so gross. However, this one time I saw one person was inspired and they're like, wow. And they came straight in and started talking. They were crying and stuff like that. And I was just like, you know what? For all that work this person has done, if just one person can come, wouldn't that be worth it? Honestly, like think about this. Of all the evangelism you've tried so much evangelism. It would be worth it if just one person came. If you evangelize just one person, I think it would be worth it. So I thought to myself, as once I saw that it actually worked on certain people, I was like, then it could be worth it. It may not be right for everyone, but maybe God sent you there for that one person. Right? And I thought to myself at that point, it's like, yeah, if it never worked, then it would be bad. But think about this. These people, like, we might look down on them who are like bashing people over the heads with their Bibles. But let's just say they're pulling in like 2 to 3 people a year doing that. Because I saw one at least. Then if you think about that, isn't it better than the people who are trying to do it in a wise way but get 0? You know what I mean? I was like going, wow, like there is something out there for everyone. And I think that we have to kind of look at it in a different way when you see if it's successful or not too, right? We can say all we want, but then if it's successful and it gets to the goal and the purpose, then it might be worth it, right? To start thinking about it in that way. Either way, that's just kind of something that was in my head, like spur of the moment kind of thing. But yeah, either way. I got some updates. Two articles just came out recently, and you guys can, I won't put the articles there because it's all in Korean either ways, right? The number of allegations against Sunsteam right now is at 9 at the moment. So on today's May, right? May 10th, which means just about 2 days ago, there were 3 more female believers in their 20s and 30s filed a complaint, right? So they filed a complaint. And then it came out on the 10th, right? They claimed that all these things happened between 2018, 2019. So these are, remember, these are complaints. Or complaints or allegations of something. And it's either indecent assault or quasi-indecent assault, something along that line. So I'm not actually sure what the actual accusations are. right? So it definitely means that it is not like what Maple said happened to her, but it seems like unwanted advance or something. I'm not sure. I'll have to get more deeper into it because it doesn't say anything about the details. So there's one thing over there. And, like I'm going to tell you guys is, the number is not the issue. The issue is the proof. That's the biggest thing. The issue is the proof more than anything else, okay? And the second news that came out is about the first trial will happen next month, which means it's going to be June, when is it? June 9th. Right? June 9th. On June 9th is going to be the first trial for KJS and a couple others who are going for, what do you call it? 4 female executives, including the head of the International Missions Bureau, secretary, with the secretary. And this is all for aiding and abetting. So it's being an accomplice to Sunstein, right? So they're all brought to trial. Their first trial starts on June 9th. So that's something that we should be praying for also. So now we have 2 trials going on at the same time. We have Sunstein's trial. And remember, it's the next trial is going to be on the Netflix audio, which is going to be next week. In America, in the Western countries, it should be on the 17th, but it'll be on the 18th, sorry. Yeah, because it'll be the 18th afternoon, so it should be on the 18th in Western countries too. So that's going to be the trial for Sunstein on May 18th, and then on June 9th is the first trial for KJS and others. They said were aiding and abetting, accomplices to Sunstein in the crimes and stuff like that too. So that is going to be the next trial, and I hope it's something that, this is something I do think that a lot of us should be praying for also, right? We should pray for it. Pray for all the things to come out because, even those trials may even be able to help Sunstein's case too. You're like, how would it help Sunstein's case? Because there could be a lot of information that comes out there that goes against what, like, say, Maple and Francis are saying and stuff like that too, right? So it might be going against them, right? And we're like, oh, okay, well, okay. So that could actually aid and help them there. But that's a separate trial, and both the accusers from Netflix, Maple and the Australian, are going to be, they're against those people in that trial too. It's very complicated, guys. There's like 3 different sides. There is the Sunstein side, the KJS side, and then the no one side. They don't like both, right? So we're seeing 3 different sides all working at the same time. It's quite complex. It's like a spider web of things that are going on at the same time. But I hope for all of us here too that we'll be able to do things in a better, we'll be able to focus on what we need to focus on. Trial still going on. Let it pass, right? Let it pass, meaning let all the stuff go through first and just focus on your missions, focus on your jobs, focus on your family. And, like I said, it's still ongoing. And, just do the thing. Like, most of us, the vast majority of us have never experienced or seen or even felt any of these things happening. We've just benefited from providence. Let life go on, right? And let the people of the mission do those things. Just understand what's going on and pray for those things as much as you can. All right? So there it is, guys. That's kind of like the beginning, the first portion of today's podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So let's get into our first break.
We believe in the same God, but we are on different levels.
Put your hands in the sky if you feel alive. All the stories that we made, just you and I. Never losing all the passion. All this love is my obsession. Oh my gosh, this feeling got me heat stroke. His love like a billion pots about to heat though. I ain't never breaking from this bond, cause you and I are only one. If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? Who you with? If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with? You with? You get together with the Lord every day, all day. You get together with the Lord all day, all day. You get together with the Lord every day, all day. You get together with the Lord all day, all day. Together with the Lord, I'm living my best life. Don't worry about a thing, it's only sunny life. We sing about memory stories that we share. We'll fall deeper in love as we stop and just stare. My eyes only on you, they sparkle with love. Don't forget my charm too. There will never be another. Live this life only for you. I give you this promise that I will hold true. If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you
are on different levels.
All right, guys, so let's get into today's second segment, which is the Wednesday message word study. This week's message is act absolutely according to God's will. Wednesday message, very different from church to church, depending on the preachers, what they realize and what they want to talk about, and what is more pertinent to their church at their time. So I hope it's something that, even though I'm talking about a message that you may not have heard, I hope you guys will get different inspirations and realizations from it. Okay, so the Wednesday message, I really enjoyed this one because they started off with this a Bible scripture in Matthew chapter 21 called the parable of the two sons. And those of you guys don't know this, basically there's two sons. The first son is asked to come help the father. The guy says, yes, I will, but then in the end doesn't help his dad. The second son he asks says, no, I won't, but in the end eventually helps his dad, right? And basically, the point of this story for all of us here today is, basically that's kind of like us too. A lot of us have inspirations, we have dreams telling us what to do, we have thoughts, advice, whatever it is, but sometimes we kind of ignore them or we forget about them and we don't actually do what God wants us to do at that time, right? And especially at this time, the time period we're living in right now, and this very moment, 2023, there are certain things that we need to do. It is a time of action and it requires a lot of prayer, repentance, action, all these are different things. So one of the big things that was spoken about in this message was, now is a time not to just declare that, I'm all for supporting this history, whatever it is. We have to be those that more than just declaring with your lips, we have to put it into action, which is going to be the most important part, right? Actually, Sunstein talked about this parable a while back, and he says, yeah, that's true that the second son did do better than the first son because even though he said initially he wouldn't, he actually did it, right? And that is the most important part, which is the action. But Sunstein said, if you want to be perfect, you would have said, I will help, and then you did help. Because, there is pain that is caused when you say, I'm not going to help you. That's pain. And, sometimes people might get upset or your parents might be like, oh, this son that I raised, what kind of son did I raise? And then they'll think about all these bad things. But when you do eventually come, it kind of restores you, right? But isn't it better that from the beginning you say you're going to help and then you help? Because on the other side, there's still pain of, oh, this great son, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful. He knows the value of all the hard work, and then he eventually doesn't show up. You're like, what the heck kind of son is this, right? It almost feels like, what matters in the end is if you do what the father wants, which is, the father wanted help with some work, right? And there was a second verse that was made, which is Matthew 7:21, which is a very scary one because it's like, it's the verse that says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of God. It's only the one that does what the Father wants, right? Does the will of God, right? So when we look at these two examples, what we're seeing is there is a will. Right? God has a will. In this week's message, it's about, do you know God's will? What is God's will for us right now? And God's will is what God wants. What is his purpose? What is his goal? And there's not just this large goal of salvation history, but we have to realize, there's a will for all things, right? There is a will for all things, including each and every one of us. But in order for us to reach that will, what is the number one thing? The number one thing is you have to be united with the Holy Trinity and with the one that God sent, right? And that's the big initial thing. Just like at the time of Noah, it's not just about believing in God. You had to follow Noah. Follow what he says. Get into the ark, just like his family did. The same with Moses. If you want to escape slavery, you had to follow Moses. With Jesus too, to receive salvation, it couldn't just be about you following God. But remember, following God means to follow God's will, which sometimes means to listen to a certain person, right? Which is basically the chosen one, the one that he sent. And last week's message, remember, there was a reminder of last week's message saying that, the will can change. And we're like, whoa, what do you mean the will can change? And I think this is a great point is, from last week's message, it's about how you treat the one sent, right? And depending on that, the will can change for you, right? It can change depending on how you treat the one sent. And the outcome changes according to your responsibility of how you treat the one sent, how you listen to him, how you put the words of God into action. And that's something that we have to think about even today, right? Even today, right now, there is an individual will where God is trying to bless you. But if you don't follow the will, if you don't follow the one that God has sent, if you don't listen to his words and do and put the words into action, then we cannot reach that point, right? The will can actually change. God has a will for us. It's something that he really wants. He wants to bless us. Like it says in Romans chapter 8, verse 29, God does, he does it for the good of those who love him, right? And we are those that love God, and he's planning all these good things out, but it all depends on, do we do our responsibility or not, right? Like right now, what is the responsibility? Responsibility is not to be influenced, right? Don't be influenced by the wicked. Don't be influenced by those that come against us. Don't be influenced, right? Right now is a time to hold on until the end of the year where everything comes out. And of course, living by God's will can sometimes be frustrating. It can give you worries and anxieties, right? It's just true because, we're going through some difficulties here and then, right? And sometimes we're frustrated because we're not even sure if we're living by God's will, right? And this is why the answer comes out this week's message, where it's not about, if you think about the individual will, one thing that's very clear about this week's message is if you're searching for your individual will, the individual will is different from person to person. And that's why the Sunday message just can't say, do this, because that may only be for a specific person. The individual will that you have is different from the next person, right? And different from any other person in church, which means finding that will is like, well, if they're all different, then how are we going to find it? And the answer is you have to find the answers by listening to the word that is given by the one that is sent, right? The word is the standard of God's will, right? That's why we heard that if you were to put the Bible into one word, it would be will, right? God's will. We find the answers when we listen to the word, when we listen to revelations, when we listen to the dream. We have all these other different things that come to us because we're listening to the word, right? So remember, if you want to find your will, you have to keep listening to the word really deeply, understand what it's saying. It is the standard of the will of God, right? The word, right? And that's why the word is something we have to constantly listen to. The word is something that we have to think about. God gave and when you think, why does it have to be from the person that God sent? Well, that's not only just the standard we see all throughout the Bible. That's God's way of doing things, right? That's God's method. It's because through that person, God gives the will, right? God gives the will to the person sent, right? And this is how he saves, whether it's Noah saving the people from the flood, Moses saving the people from Egypt, Jesus saving the people from eternal death, right? And in the same way, we have to understand even right now today, God gives the will to the person sent to save the world, right? And that's why following that person, you're actually fulfilling the will. And the will is carried out by always using that person that is sent, right? And I think it's the best way, because if you have too many people with too many different levels and too many different thoughts, this is when it gets really troublesome, right? There is only one source. And if we understand this really carefully, this is when you can't get, I think you can't get deceived by someone else saying that they know better. Because there's only one person the word is given to, right? And that's why we have to listen to the one sent, know them absolutely, right? Believe in love, believe in the Holy Trinity in Jesus, and then we're going to be able to live according to the will, right? So everything is connected. If you think about it, it's all connected to the person sent. And you're like, but what about loving God? Well, that's connected to the person sent, because if you love God, you're going to follow the one that is sent. So if we know him deeply, know him clearly, and then we believe in God, we believe the Holy Trinity in Jesus, this is when we're starting to live according to God's will. Now, of course, the message said all throughout Sunday, if you don't live according to God's will, a lot of the will can be broken. You can't go to heaven. Even if you are raptured, you'll lose it if you do it according to your will or someone else's will, right? You can't receive salvation in that way. So we got to remember, the ultimate goal of God's will is salvation, saving people from death. And how does that happen? How are we saved from death? It is to make people into the counterparts of love to God. Like that is the ultimate way. Because when you become someone who is a counterpart of love to God, this is when you follow, when you believe, you put the words into action, right? And that's why that's the purpose of creation, is to make people into the counterparts of love, right? And this is what's going to happen. This needs to happen in order for us to reach that level of salvation, right? To reach that level of the time period, right? So I hope it's something that a lot of us will start to think about more deeply when it comes to God's will in our own lives, that is absolutely connected to the Word and to the one that God has sent, right? That's kind of the big thing there. Making the brides of God. Well, that's this time period, right? Making the time period, the brides of God in this time period. It was making the children of God in the New Testament and making the servants of God in the Old Testament time too. So that's the purpose of creation. That's kind of the reason God started everything. From that extends everything from salvation to going to heaven, not going to the domain of death, all extends from us becoming the counterparts of love, fulfilling the purpose of creation, right? And I liked, one thing that I liked from the Wednesday message that I heard is, when you think about even Sunsteam had to be trained, right? So even if when you look at the Bible, when you look at, is it the book of Hebrews chapter 8, I believe. Hebrews chapter 8 even talks about Jesus' life, right? And in Jesus' life too, am I missing this? Hebrews chapter, is it 5 then? Gosh, it's because I haven't taught in so long, right? Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7 through 9 says, during the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverent submission. He was son, though he learned obedience from what he suffered and once made perfect, right? So we see that there's a training, right, that Jesus had to go through. Sometimes he went through training too, where in the beginning, of course, he's not living to God's will. He's living according to his own will. But every time he lived according to what he wanted, it didn't work out. In the end, he realized that the only way is to live according to God's will, right? And this is what we are seeing today too, right? That when we live according to God's will, we have to give up everything according to God's will. And that's why we continually pray to know God's will. We earnestly pray and we leave it up to God. And when we do this, then things work out for the best, not just for ourselves, but for this history, for the people around us. And I think that's kind of like the difference between human thoughts and God's thoughts. Human thoughts are very narrow, that we may only think of things that are good for us individually, maybe up to our family, right? But when it comes to God's will is thinking of something way bigger, where it has to do with the entire world. And this requires that some things, there needs to be compromise in different things. But it would be for the betterment of the whole world, right? And this is why we need to continually pray to know God's will. And we have to earnestly pray and leave it up to God. So if we do this, then we're going to let things, if we leave everything to God, then things will work out in the best way, right? Which may not be that you become a trillionaire. I don't know if you really even need it, right? So, another really big point that I thought is there was a reminder of God's will, that he did not predestine for us to go through pain, suffering, injustice because of the wicked, right? And, just because we're suffering, just because we're going through this, the one thing we have to remember is this: just because you're going through it, you don't just sit there and just say, oh, well, God's people all went through the same thing, so this is part of life. No, the thing that we have to understand is God is saying to us is, don't just sit there and take it. Tell God. Inspire God. Let him know what's going on. Let him know what you're going through. And I think that's an even bigger point. Yeah, it's true. The people of God are always suffering because of the wicked and the unrighteous, right? Yeah, that's true. However, it doesn't mean just sit there and take it. Don't just sit there and take it. Like, if someone's punching me in the face, I don't just leave my hands down and just keep letting him punch me in the face and say, well, that's part of life. I'm going to put my hands up and guard myself. And then what's going to happen is prayer is like me not only just putting my arms up, but then me punching back, right? It's me punching back. I tell God what's going on. God, this is what's happening right now. This is so unjust. This is what's happening. So I hope that all of us too can be like that. When you look at Joseph, never stumbled. And he just kept pushing and pushing, thinking this was God's will. They all suffered, but the wicked were repaid according to their deeds, right? So, looking at the predestination lesson, yeah, God is predestining what is good. That's one of the big points. The absolute predestination is what is good. And even if you live as a righteous person, right, we're going to suffer due to the wickedness of the world. We're going to go through injustice because of unrighteous and deceitful people. But we also have to know that if we are in the history of God, we're going to win, right? We're going to receive blessings. And we don't know what it means to win, though, because, there's a lot of different things that could be a win, right? Like for all of us here, in our hearts, we're thinking, man, if we're going to win in the end, I hope that all the things will be exposed to this and that, and, that it'll all come out to be a lie, whatever it is, right? Yeah, that's kind of what we think, but that's just at our level. What is the big win that's going to happen? And the honest truth is, we don't know. In the end, we'll win, but we got to see what it means to God in this situation that we win. Because honestly, I think one of the big things would be a big win is if all the people came back, they said, oh, we did wrong, and then da-da-da-da-da, and they all come back, whatever it is, right? So that is something that I was thinking about is like, yeah, what does it really mean to win in the end, right? What does it mean for a win? Is it really a win to God if people are sent to hell? And the answer is absolutely not. Right? I don't know if that's considered a win to God, if God is going to leave the 99 to find the one sheep and then rejoice, right? So I think we also have to temper our expectations of what we expect to be a win at the end of 2023. I think that's got to be something that we have to leave it to God in God's righteous judgment. And that's why in the message it's like, hey, leave it to God, entrust it to God. What is the win? I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure. There's something that I think would be a great win, but what would be, what is God seeing when he looks at the whole big picture, right? Yeah, everyone's going to pay for their deeds. Everyone's going to pay for what they did. Everyone, the righteous and the unrighteous, right? And, we have to be very certain that, yeah, some things that are not God's will, we have to understand it, okay? So if for us, the number one thing is God's will. That's the number one thing, right? God's will, fulfilling God's will. And all of us here listening to the words of God, following the one that God sent, this is where we are living according to God's will. We are, right? Look at, the great example is, look at Woimyeongdong too, right? Made according to God's will, that's why it became like that. But imagine if it was made according to people's will. Like, remember when Sunstein first wanted to make the Ambition masterpiece? He wanted to make concrete steps, 7 steps. Can you imagine what people would come and see that instead? How unmysterious and not beautiful. Like, that'd be so ugly. You have these gray steps instead of the Ambition masterpiece. It would be less than average, right? So the big thing is, when we make decisions as a human being, we're only thinking about our life on this planet, usually, our body's lifetime, things that are going to last in this lifetime. But God is looking and considering not just what happens in the physical realm, he also thinks about the spiritual eternity. So can you imagine how big those thoughts are, right? If God's thinking to that level of big picture, then we need to entrust everything to God, right? All the things to God's will. Right? The level we have compared to God, the amount of mistakes that we make, yeah, compared to God, we are trash compared to God, right? And this is why we have to confess and leave all things to God, right? The end will for all of us is to live as heaven's counterparts of love. This is predestined. We are called and raised to do this, right? So, all of us here, there's going to be a bunch of people that are very, very strong, very, very convicted in this history. And what I'm going to tell you guys is yeah, you're fine. Those of you who are still in the middle, not really sure about what's happening, what's going on, I'm going to say, hey, wait till the end. if this is going to be a major life decision, it's not going to hurt to wait for the next 7 months, right? Wait till the end and see what actually happens at the end of the year, right? Don't quit along the way. Don't fall for deceptions, right? And don't let people say, oh, this is not God's will, right? You need to overcome it and go to the end. That's the will of God. Then his blessings are going to pour upon us, right? If we made it. This is one of the hardest things right now, 2023. If you make it to the end, that's such a great blessing. And there's nothing to be complaining about, right? I hope that even in the end, like this kind of my thoughts is, we shouldn't look down on each other, those who are super convicted and those who are in the middle and stuff. No, all we have to hope and pray for is that we all make it. That's it. Blessings will come as they come, but we have to do it and make it until the end, right? This is something that God's been wanting for not just 6,000 years, for all eternity. Like, why would you want this to shatter? God will not let it shatter. There's one thing that did come out in the message when I was listening to it, in our message. I'm not sure if it happened in every message, but, if you shatter the will and you leave this history, right? If you deny the one that God sends, it's so hard to come back, right? Remember, we're talking not just leaving, we're talking denying the one that God sent. Like I said, there's some people who left because of unfortunate circumstances, but they didn't reject. They didn't say that he wasn't the one or whatever it is. But imagine you go to the point where you reject the one that God sends, or you curse him and stuff like that. That's not something that's restored so easily, right? The way that, it's extremely difficult to return in that case. So we have to value. If we don't value what we have right now, ultimately it'll get taken away, right? And who's it given to, right? Just like the parable of the talents it's given to the one who already has. It's given to those that value it. We need to value this salvation we have. We need to value God's will as our life. And know that it all starts with us becoming the counterparts of love, right? We got to live for God's will with everything that we have, right? We got to take back that love that was stolen from us, right? I talked about this in the Sermons of Sky yesterday when we started sinking back into the world. We got to take back that love. Taking back, if Satan steals it from you, man, can you imagine how hard it would be to steal it back from Satan? So cherish it now. Cherish God's love. Cherish God's blessings. Cherish the rapture that we've received. And once we know this, it's so amazing, right? Understanding what it means to be the counterpart of love to the almighty, omnipotent, omniscient God, right? If anything, I'm going to tell you guys right now, as my own personal thing is, regardless of what happens to the people around you, we can never act like Satan. Don't act like Satan cursing people. Don't act like Satan talking behind people's backs, saying terrible things about them, right? Don't act like Satan, spreading gossip and rumors. Don't act like Satan, right? Your whole goal is to make people leave, to make them leave. It's really sad if it gets to that level. Everyone's got to, if you still believe in God, because I'm going to say that I still respect some people who left, but left properly. I think I give respect for that. Because some of the people, they're just like, they just go crazy, right? But there's other people I look at, I respect because they're like, hey, yeah, I disagree with it now. And then they leave in such a way where there is a path back. And others will leave in such a way, they make it so they'll never come back. They're like burning bridges everywhere. When I look at that, I'm just like, ugh. Even for me, I don't want to burn any bridges. Why would I want to do that? A lot of these people I've had relationships with, right? Been friends for decades. I don't want to lose those types of things. Yeah, we might not agree on certain things, and I might not hang out with them as much as I normally would because we just disagree on a very important matter of our life. However, I'm not going to sit there and just say that, I can't burn it, because ultimately in the end, I don't want anyone to be going to a place where there's suffering. I don't want to go there either, right? And that's why we have to always do things the way God would want us to do it, right? Thinking in those terms, right? And I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, okay? So there it is, guys. That is the word study for the Wednesday message. I'm sure it's very, very different from the ones that you guys have heard, and, because it's quite normal. Normal meaning that we all talk about, each leader is going to give a message according to their church situation and according to what they believe in, according to their level. Okay. So there it is, guys. That is the word study for the Wednesday message. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So let's get into the second break.
I'm happy if you're happy. The Trinity are happy too. That is all that matters. Since we found the path of life, now we can say time can keep flowing away. I'm on the way to heaven. We have fulfilled God's purpose of eternal love. In that golden heaven above, from the sunrise to the sunset, even as the moon begins to rise, even as the stars light up the night, we should go on serving God, serving the Holy Spirit. You and I should spend our days like this. I'm on the way to heaven. We have fulfilled God's purpose of eternal love. In that golden heaven above, from the sunrise to the sunset, even as the moon begins to rise.
All right, so let's get into our last segment for today and for the entire week. And it's every Friday. We have Until the End Mental Health Podcast with Daniel Baker over there in Korea. Just graduated high school, doing an amazing job. And today he's going to talk about the true dangers of the internet and how it can affect your brain. So he'll talk more about how it affects this generation. And I think it's something that we do need to understand because we're the ones in our churches growing up with that generation that's becoming high school and university students. And if we don't understand them very well, it's going to be very difficult for us to take care of them too. All right? So either way, please welcome all the way from Korea. This is Daniel Baker with Until the End.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Do It Until the End podcast. Welcome to the end of the road. Yeah, this week is finished. This 1 week, however good it was or however bad it was, it's now coming to an end. And we are all getting ready to receive the word. Now, yeah, this week has been very interesting for me because I've always been working to experiment with my body, my health, my diet. So one of the biggest things I've been doing is I've been trying to get 10,000 steps a day. And I've been doing really well with this challenge. So past 4 days, I would take a hike and go through the woods and the mountains around the Warmerdang area and walk to work. It's like a 40-minute hike to work, and it's pretty interesting because I'm able to pretty decently easily if I'm active within the day, I'm able to get those 10,000 steps. However, today has just been brutal because I was like at 9 o'clock at night and I only have 5,000 steps. So what I was doing was I was listening to a podcast, but at the same time I was like jogging in place in my room so I can get the steps pretty quickly. And it's been a struggle, to be honest, when you're like 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. I think it was yesterday where I had a similar situation where I only had like 6,000 steps. Like you have to become a little bit creative and have the discipline to actually do the rest of those 10,000 steps. And yeah, 10,000 steps is around 500 calories for a person that's 900 kilograms in weight. So yeah, for me, that's probably like 500, maybe 450 calories a day that I'm burning just from the 10,000 steps, just from being active. And that covers a lot of food. 500 calories is probably not a lot of food in your mind. However, that's like all of your protein shakes. If you have 2 protein shakes a day, which the one that I have is Isopure, it's the chocolate version. I think it's around 200 calories. So the two shakes that I have, protein shakes that I have, it's covered by walking. And it's always just really fun to try to experiment with your body and see what kind of diets, what kind of types of fasting, what kind of paleo, vegan, what kind of diet and lifestyle really is the best for your type of body. Yeah, so I've been trying intermediate fasting with 10,000 steps, and it's been very crazy. I've been seeing some amazing results where right there's like the ring of fat on your belly. I can visibly see the fat or like literally decreasing, and it's pretty interesting when you get those fast results and I've been only doing it for like 6 days, and it's been a lot of fun. So today we're going to talk about a topic that I watched, and I was like, man, I gotta talk and I gotta share this with the people on MSD 117.8. That was literally my first reaction. So it really shocked me to my core. So let's start off with the types of people there are in the world. They're the FIRE people, the financial independence, retire early people. These are the people who their life starts off with they feel like that life starts off with retirement, and after retirement they're going to enjoy life. So these are the people that are always grinding. They're trying to retire when they're 40, make millions of dollars. And yeah, But there are also people who are on the opposite side, who kind of check out of the capitalist society. They go to a 9 to 5 work, and they're just kind of aimlessly living their lives. There is a massive similarity between these two groups. I mean, you guys can probably guess, but there's a lack of purpose. Like, what is life? Why is life worth it if we're gonna grind for 20 years and then retire early? Like, why are we doing that? Or why are we going to a 9 to 5 job? And why are we going on self-improvement and constantly, improving ourselves, constantly seeing what works? Why are we doing this? What are we going towards? There's a massive epidemic right now within my generation and probably maybe even the previous generation, where there is a lack of purpose within the society. Now, there's a couple studies, and there's a couple things what happens if you don't have purpose, if society has difficulties finding purpose within each other's lives. So, pornography addiction, it's currently on the rise, and what does this have to do with purpose, right? What does purpose have to do with pornography? Now, there's a correlation between, a lack of purpose and an increased use of pornography within life, because when people do not have purpose, they kind of get lazy and they are like, what can I do to get those free dopamine? What can I do? And they watch pornography, and they get that hit of dopamine, and that's their satisfaction level, right? And that's one aspect of society really struggling to find their purpose and the aftermath. Now, another one is suicide, increase in suicide, because there's a lack of purpose. What is the point of being on this earth? There's no point of being here. That's why, people check out of life earlier, and people, have issues with suicide these days. Yeah, it's pretty sad, but, a lot of people in society these days have issue with purpose. And if you don't have purpose, you don't have a life of happiness. And, you have struggles with getting up in the morning and working or fulfilling your purpose because you don't know what your purpose is. Now, the good thing is, it's very scientific the way we can find our purpose. So the first thing we need to understand is a sense of purpose can't be given to you. And this sense of purpose has to come from within. Now, if it comes from within, why are people right now, why is everyone having difficulty finding their purpose? Why are people having difficulties waking up in the morning and getting up and having fiery determination to go within their day? And one of the biggest things that changed from previous generations to ours is, what has changed? The acceleration of technology. Now, technology is very useful, right? I'm not going to dispute the usefulness of technology. It brings people together. We can talk with people, even on this podcast, from all of the places within the world. And yeah, there's a lot of benefits with technology, but the biggest fundamental change that technology imposed onto our life is it externalized our attention. Now, what does that mean? It means that we're always listening to something. We're always doing something that, we're listening to music, we're listening to podcasts, we're always reading books on our technology, our iPads, our Kindles. Now, every moment of my day, I realized my attention is externalized. Now, there is no time, right? Because of the rich amount of technology and technology stimulation we get, there is no time to connect and internalize our thoughts. Yeah, connect and internalize our thoughts. There's no time to do that because we're so connected with technology these days. Technology fundamentally changed our perception, our attention, our thoughts, and we're being controlled by these media companies, by the media we watch, the algorithms. And, according to the algorithms, your whatever thing you're trying to do might change. Whatever self-improvement thing you might do might change. If the algorithm puts into your face a YouTube video about fasting, fasting is a good thing, right? Or losing fat is a good thing, right? This is imposed onto us by technology, right? Now let's go into the past. There's a big difference right now, right? So in the past, people were more attentional. They were able to detect our internal stimuli. So our internal stimuli, what is that? Our emotions, our thoughts, our creativity. However, we are becoming out of touch with our inner voice that gives us a purpose, and it determines our purpose, right? So purpose, as I said, is very individualized, and no one can self-impose, or no one can impose a purpose on you, right? You either have no purpose or you find your own purpose, right? And the sad thing about technology is it shuts down your emotions. It shuts down, your amygdala, your limbic system, where it creates emotion, it creates thoughts, it creates creativity. Those are the parts of the brain which it gives you life, and we're numbing ourselves because of technology. We're being more and more disconnected to our internal signals, and it's actually very sad. I realized this about myself, to be perfectly honest, and when I realized this, one of the reasons why I was taking a lot of those hikes was just to try to find my purpose. Yeah, it's been a very interesting run this past week, because trying to think a lot about what's happening around me, but also about myself, my future, and what really tries to wake me up and make me, go into fiery mode first thing in the morning. Trying to find my purpose, right? Now, let's talk about how do you find your purpose. One of the best ways is to disconnect from technology. You've heard of many people go and find themselves, right? Go into the Himalayas and find themselves. Sanzaim was disconnected with technology for 10 years and went to Dejensan every single day to go pray and receive the word, right? One of the things we can do to find our purpose is to become bored again. So we're able, after that period of boredom, you're able to find your purpose and why you want to live the life you are living right now. Yeah, you've probably had this experience too, right? Shower thoughts. What are shower thoughts? This is the one time in the day, right, where we go into the shower and technology cannot touch us. That's the one place technology has not touched us. But I've saw on YouTube, right, just people playing Angry Birds in the shower. It's why? And those shower thoughts where everything, you get these massive, your brain just goes under fire. You're able to really think and fix problems, and you probably had the experience. But after having a shower, lots of those times I get amazing ideas that comes into these podcasts, my YouTube videos, and it's shower thoughts, right? It's pretty interesting, where I really thought to myself, how if I was able to have my shower thoughts 24 hours a day, right? Every single moment of my day, I was able to be that sharp, that connected to my inner self. What kind of life would I be able to live, right? Yeah. So to be more in touch with your internal signals, we need to become bored again. We need to sit and make sure that our brain can go through boredom. And after boredom, that's when your brain is very focused to kickstart into finding your purpose, into doing the work that you need to do right now. Yeah, this was a very interesting episode because, preparing this episode, it gave me a lot of stuff to think about. And it's really preparing this episode, it made me really think about how I lived my life. And kind of, 19 years of age and I already have regrets, right? Yeah. But yeah, trying to be connected with your inner self, your spirit, your soul. It's so important with your spiritual life, your mental life, your overall happiness, your purpose. That's what I realized this 3 days ago, right? Yeah. So I hope everyone enjoyed this podcast episode, and I'm always in the comment section below. So if you want to talk and if you want to have a chat in the comment section below, we can have that. And to everyone who's improving and going until the end, let's walk this path together. Peace out, guys. Bye-bye.
And there it is. That is Until the End Mental Health Podcast with Daniel Baker in Korea. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. And it's very realistic and it's true what he's talking about. And it's something that we all need to deal with, whether it's his generation, the generation after, our own generations, because the internet is a wonderful place, but can also be a deep and dark place too. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave some comments below for Daniel if you have any questions or comments. I hope you guys have an amazing and awesome weekend. This week on Saturday, what do we have? I do believe we have a music video coming out. And of course, next week, Man Cave. And I believe a new podcast on Love and Life with Chelsea and Aaron will come out there too. All right. Everyone have a great weekend. And we'll see you guys again on Monday on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive,